ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरोन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
Sorry, Prabhuji. Can you just do that sandhi, vichhed, whatever, however, I don't know how to speak those words. That nirishwavad, can you just do that sandhi thing? How do you break the two words? Nirishwavad, that is how Charvak school does not accept Ishvara. And this Nyaya Shastra refutes this Nirishwavad. Can you just separate these two words? How do you separate?
निरीश्वरवाद,
Nirishwa.
निरीश्वरवाद. Because of the prefix ni, nirishwara means non-existence of the Ishvara. Nirishwaravada. So here we are not doing Sandhi Vichhed. Sandhi Vichhed is a one word actually. It's a one word, Nirishwaravada. Non-existence of the Ishvara.
So there is two va, right? Nirishwa and then vad is different, right? I mean, there'll be half va and
Nirishwara, Nirishwaravada.
okay,
Nirishwaravada
okay,
is a
understood.
combined word. Because Nirishwara and then Vada, both are combined together as a compound word, it becomes Nirishwaravada. The argument for the non-existence of the Ishvara, or the theory of non-existence of the Ishvara. So we were discussing what is the idea of the Jīva-tattva according to the different schools. So we discussed the idea of the Charvak school and the Buddhism school. Uh, so we revised the Charvak and Buddhism. Now we'll go to the next school. Jainism. In the Jainism, they say that in the pure state, the Atma possesses infinite perception, infinite knowledge, bliss, and power. It is all perfect and distinct from the body. Number of Atmas are infinite. The dimension of the self is considered neither atomic nor all pervading. So there are basically three parimanas: atomic, anuparimana, vibhu parimana, and madhyama parimana. According to the Vaishnava Vedanta, Atma is anu in parimana, atomic in size. That's why we usually say that when you divide just to give an idea, when you divide the tip of a hair into 10,000 parts, 1/10,000th of a tip of a hair, like that, an idea is here. So according to the Vaishnava Vedanta, Atma is anu parimana. But according to Jainism, Atma is having Madhyama Parimana. So there are three Parimanas. One is Anu Parimana, and second is all pervading, and third is in between, Madhyama Parimana. So something which is Anu Parimana, you can't perceive with your eyes. Vibhu Parimana, which is all pervading. Vibhu Parimana is something which is all pervading. Madhyama Parimana is something tangible. So it is medium size and determined by the magnitude of the body it inhabits. Depending on the size of the body, that is the size of the Atma. So the Atma occupies the whole of the body. And it's of the very small size when it originates in the womb, but the Atma goes on expanding as the body grows in size. You can see how it is directly opposite to the Bhagavad Gita, Najayate Mriyate va Katva Bhavita Vana Bhuyaha. Body undergoes change, but Atma does not undergo the change, the six transformations. In Jainism, Atma also goes on expanding as the body grows in size. And each successive transmigration, a particular Jiva contracts or expands in its magnitudinal proportions. When the human being becomes an animal, so now the Atma is going to expand from the body of an animal size, human size to, say, when the human being, suppose the next life is going to become an elephant. So now the Atma in the next life it will expand. A bound self is vitiated by the subtle particles of fine matter, that is karma, that accrue to a jiva due to its former actions and intentions. Vitiated means what? Vitiated means impaired, ruined in character, impaired by diminution. So a bound self is impaired by the subtle particles of the karma. The means through which karma clings to the Atma is called ashrava, or the influx of karma matter, which is the effect, and that is the cause of the bondage of the self, and this bondage is beginningless. So you can see that most of the Indian schools, they accept the beginningless bondage. Only the Christian theory talks about falling from the paradise of God, fall from Vaikuntha, like that. Okay, this is the Jainism, briefly. So Nyaya Vaisheshika. Nyaya and these are two schools, but they have almost same idea about the Atma, therefore it's combined, presenting combined. So Nyaya and Vaisheshika, they share a common view about the Atma. Both of them claim that Atma is eternal substance, devoid of parts or divisions, and bereft of consciousness. So they say consciousness is an incidental quality of the Atma. And the consciousness arises when it is in contact with the mind. According to Nyaya Vaisheshika, Atma is all pervading, Vibhu Parimana. Jainism says Atma is Madhyama Parimana. Nyaya Vaisheshika says Atma is all pervading. Atma is the substratum of knowledge, substratum of the knowledge or consciousness. And Atma is motionless. So these schools don't distinguish between knowledge and consciousness. So Atma is the substratum of the jnana, substratum of the jnana or consciousness. So when a self becomes liberated, that means when it becomes disconnected from the mind, it remains as an inert substance. That is what they call as mukti. So the self is the real subject of experience, a real knower, and a real agent. And each self has a mind, a psychic instrument, during its empirical existence. And in liberation, the Atma is separated from the mind. And the self is different from the body, senses, and the mind. Atma is separate, distinct from the body, self, and senses, and the mind. And they talk about there's a separate Atma in each body. That means there are infinite Atmas. So they accept the plurality of the Atmas. But they say Atma is all pervading. Atma is different from the body, senses, and mind. Charvak school, we saw in Charvak school, some people say Atma is the body. Some people say Atma is the mind. Some people say Atma is the senses. Or some Charvak school says Atma is the intelligence. So you can see the contrast between, there are some right things, some wrong things in different schools. Atma is not all pervading reality. Atma is actually pervading within the body. It cannot be all pervading. But according to Nyaya Vaisheshika, Atma is all pervading. It is Vibhu Parimana. And then there is a Mimamsa school. Within Mimamsa schools, there are two divisions. One is the school of Kumarila Bhatta and another is the Prabhakara. There are some common points in both the schools, some differences are there. So both of them admit the plurality of the individual beings and consider the Atma as an eternal, all-pervading substance. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So mostly I'm just going through the purport only. So it becomes easy for you to revise also. So both of them admit the plurality of the individual beings, consider the Atma as an eternal, all-pervading substance. That is the substratum of the consciousness. Substratum means what we can say is the any layer lying underneath another, a surface on which an organism grows or is attached. Well, like Atma, the consciousness is present in the Atma. When I say suppose, yeah, book is present in the table. So the table is the Adhara and the book is the Adeya. Or the table is the Adhikarana in which the book is present. So Atma is the Adhara or the Adhikarana of the consciousness. Consciousness is present in the Atma. The self is the real knower, the subject of experience. Is a knower, the self is the subject of experience. Self only is experiencing, the subject of experience. And self is an agent, it is a karta. It is distinct from the body, senses, mind, and knowledge. These are the views in the Mimamsa. So Prabhakara, like the Nyaya Vaisheshika school, Prabhakara is one of the division in the Mimamsa school. So Prabhakara accepts the self is essentially unconscious. Consciousness is an incidental property of the self when it is in contact with the mind, according to the Prabhakara school of Mimamsa. Cognition, affect, volition, and agency are the properties of the self and arise due to merit and demerit in its conditioned state. In the liberated state, the self remains as a pure substance divested of its qualities, including consciousness and bliss. It means like an inert stone, like that. So Prabhakara says that the self is merely the substrate of the cognition. Substrate of the cognition, I know. Substrate, substrate means any stratum or layer underneath another. Substrate, it means substratum. It has the same thing. A surface on which an organism grows or is attached. Adhara adhikarana. That is the meaning, substrate. Prabhakara says the self is merely a substrate of the cognition I know. The cognition I know is present in the self. Self is the adhara or adhikarana in which the cognition I know is present. But the self is not the nature of consciousness. Self is merely the substrate of the cognition, but not as of the nature of consciousness. If the Atma were of the nature of consciousness, it would result in the defect of consciousness being both support and the supported. Or in other words, subject and object. So, according to Prabhakara school, that the self is sub. Consciousness.
Prabhuji, can
It
you
is
repeat
everyone's
because
experience.
your voice just dropped. Okay. According to Prabhakar, after that your voice dropped.
The self is merely the substrate of the cognition I know. The self or the Atma is not the nature of consciousness. So the right understanding is that Atma is Sachit Ananda. It is eternal. It is made of consciousness and it is blissful. But they say Atma is only the substrate of consciousness. If the Atma were of the nature of consciousness, it would result in the defect of consciousness being both the subject, support and the supporter. Or in other words, subject and the object. So they give a reasoning. Everyone's experience that subject and object are distinct from each other. Therefore, according to the Prabhakara school of Mimamsa, Atma must be different from consciousness, implying that Atma is non-conscious. since consciousness does not constitute its essence. This is the Prabhakara school within the Mimamsa. But Kumarila Bhatta accepts the Atma as both partly conscious and partly unconscious. So Prabhakara school says that Atma is not of the nature of consciousness. Atma is the substrate or the adhara or adhikarana of the cognition that I know. So Atma is non-conscious according to the Prabhakara school. According to the Kumarila Bhatta school, Atma is partly conscious and partly unconscious. So he says that in deep sleep, there is both consciousness and unconsciousness. If all knowledge were lost during deep sleep, then what would on waking up? But such is not the case. We remember, we say, I had a good sleep. So therefore, it must be accepted that there is a stable consciousness in deep sleep. That's why we say, I had a good sleep. And this consciousness, when united with the impressions from past experiences, makes us recognize and recollect. So, according to the Kumari Labhata school, Atma is partly conscious and partly unconscious. Just like in deep sleep, we are partly unconscious because we don't perceive anything outside. At the same time, we are partly conscious. That is why we say we had I had a good sleep. But like Prabhakara and the Nyaya Vaisheshika, Kumarila too believes that in the liberated state, the self remains as a pure substance divested of its qualities of consciousness, agency, and bliss. That is Jnatritva, Kartritva, and Bhoktritva. In the liberated state, these qualities are not present. Though he adds that as in deep sleep, the self is then characterized by potential consciousness. So these are the some of the points, finer points, we may not be able to grasp. But at least what we can see is that how there are various understandings of the Atma in different schools. Some points are correct in accordance with the Shastra, Vedanta. Some points are wrong. But all these things, which are wrong, which are correct, we'll be able to see when we actually go through all these qualities of the Atma. So then Yoga and Sankhya, there are two different schools, but both are the similar opinions about the Atma. So Yoga and Sankhya consider Prakriti and Purusha as the two fundamental principles of the cosmos. So Purusha is a principle of pure consciousness, distinct from mind, intelligence, body, ego, and senses. It is not merely a substance that possesses consciousness as a quality. Rather, consciousness is its very essence. Consciousness is the very essence of the Purusha. It is the ultimate knower that is the foundation of all knowledge. And Purusha is the subject of knowledge and can never become its object. And it is beyond time and space. But here there is an important. It is devoid of any activity or modification. So according to the Sankhya and Yoga, Atma is not a karta. Devoid of any activity. That means Atma is not a karta. Purusha is devoid of any activity or modification. It is eternal and all pervading. Again, they also talk about all pervading Atma. So Sankhya and Yoga believe in the plurality of the Purushas. And bliss is different from consciousness and is a product of Sattva Guna. And knowledge is a modification of the mind called Chitta Vritti. These are the views of the Sankhya and Yoga school about the Atma. Any questions so far? Before we go ahead. And then the last school is the Advaita Vedanta. And then there's a summary of all the schools. Advaita Vedanta is given in more detail. So in the Advaita Vedanta proclaims that the Jiva is non-different from the Brahman. Tattvamasi, they quote this. I am Atma Brahma. They quote these Vakyas as a pramana. But however, this identity with Brahman is realized only when the Jiva transcends the self-identification with its temporary body-mind complex. When we become liberated, we realize that identity. The Jiva is of the nature of consciousness, eternal, beginningless, and indestructible. But this reality is the truth of the Jiva as Brahman and not as a separate and independent entity. But this reality is the truth of the Jiva as Brahman and not as a separate and independent entity. Jiva is not a separate and independent from Brahman. So Gita says, Mamevamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Jivatmas are eternally my Amsha. So there are different views among the Advaita scholars as to how the Brahman comes to be identified as the Jiva. So the most prominent among the Advaita schools hold that the Jiva is Brahman either covered by, delimited by, or reflected in ignorance. And the Brahman, Jiva, because of say, because of covered by ignorance, we forget that we are Brahman. Or because of being delimited by ignorance, the Brahman has become delimited by the different upadhis made of it coming from ignorance. Brahman has become Jivatma. Or when the Brahman gets reflected in ignorance, it has become Jivatma. So in the Brahma Sutta commentary, Shankaracharya says, he says, Abhasa eva. Read the Abhasa eva chaisha jiva parasyatmano jala suryakadivat प्रतिपत्तवयः न स एव साक्षात् नापि वस्त्वन्तरम्. The self is only the reflection of the higher Atman. So Shankaracharya, the self is only the reflection of the higher Atman. Abhasa eva chaisha jivah parasya atmano jala suryakadivat pratipattavyah nasa eva sakshat napi vastvanantaram. Self is nothing but the reflection of the higher Atman. Later, this concept became known as the Pratibimbavad, the theory of reflection, in the writings of Prakashatma and Vidyaranya. And then Shankaracharya offers another explanation about the nature of the self while commenting on the Brahma Sutra 2.3.70, the famous Ghatakash Patakash. He gives the example of Akasha being divided by various clay parts. As long as the parts are present, Akasha is only one, but the one Akasha appears to be divided. If the parts are removed, if the parts are broken, then the initial unity of the Akasha is reinstated. And even when the parts were present, Akasha was still only one, but it appeared as many in different parts. In the same way, the one Brahman becomes divided by the avidya or ignorance. But actually, there is only one reality, Brahman. So the Brahman or Atman delimited by the upadhis is the Jiva, who suffers and enjoys in accordance with its acts. When the upadhis are dissolved, the Jiva is established in the supreme glory as Brahman. Just as one mistakes the rope to be a snake, but in the dim light or in the darkness. And when the light comes, we understand, oh, it's not a snake, it is a rope. Similarly, when a person becomes liberated, one realizes that he is actually one with the Brahman. So this theory later became known as the Avachedavada. So Avachedavada is also quoted. There's a Yat param jyotirupa sampattavyam shrutam tat param brahma tat chapaha tapapamatwadi dharmakam तदेव जीवस्य पारमार्थिकं स्वरूपं तत्त्वमसि इत्यादि शास्त्रेभ्यः नेतरात् औपाधिकल्पितं तस्माद् यत् अविद्याप्रत् उपस्थापितं अपमार्थिकं जैवं रूपं कर्तृभोक्तृरागद्वेषादि दोष कलुषितम् अनेकानर्थयोगी तत् विलयनेन तत् विपरीतम् अपहत पापत्वादि विगुणकं पारमैश्वर्यं स्वरूपं विद्यया प्रतिपाद्यते सर्पादि विलयनेन रज्वादीन्. So of course, the summary of that is described, that same. When a person mistakes a rope to be a snake in darkness, when the light comes, he understands there is no snake, the rope. In the ignorance we mistake, we become absorbed in the different upadhis. But in liberated state, we realize that we are the Brahman. So this theory later became known as Avachedavada in the writings of Vachaspati Mishra. Vachaspati Mishra is one of the Advaitavada scholars. So Brahman as well as the Jiva or individual self is neither inert nor temporary nor miserable. It is devoid of agency, kartrutva, devoid of experiential capacity, bhoktrutva, and devoid of knowership, jnatrutva. So these are not the inherent qualities of the Jīva-tattva, according to Shankaracharya. So again, tasmad upadi dharmadhyasenaivatmanah kartrutvam na swabhavikam. Upadi dharma adhyasenaiva atmanah kartrutvam na swabhavikam. Kartrutva, Bhoktrutva, Jnatritva, they are not the inherent qualities of the Jivatma, according to Advaitavada school. So now we have seen the different schools about their idea about the Jivatma. Charvak school, Buddhism, and then Nyaya Vaisheshika combined, and then Mimamsa, Sankhya and Yoga combined, and then Advaita Vedanta. A brief summary of these schools. So with the exception of the Advaita Vedanta, all the other schools acknowledge a plurality of the Atma. Advaita Vedanta school, ultimately there is only one Atma. Because there is only one Brahman. Ultimately there is only the formless Brahman exists. There is no plurality of the Atma according to them. Ultimately everyone becomes one with the Brahman in liberated state. But all the other schools accept the plurality of the Atma. And Nayayikas, Vaisheshikas, Sankhyas. So first point is about the count. Second point is about the parimana. Nayayikas, Vaisheshikas, Sankhyaites, and Yogas and Advaitavadis accept the Atma as Vibhu Parimana, all pervading. And Charvak and Jains believe the Atma to be medium sized. Whatever the size of the body, that's the size of the Atma. That is as proportionate to the size of the body. Vaishnava Vedanta concludes that the Atma is atomic in size. This is the difference of opinion regarding to the Parimana. Now the third point is about the quality of Kartrutva. Nayayikas and Vaisheshikas accept the agency in the Atma, Kartrutva. Sankhya and Yoga schools claim that the agency is in Prakriti. So you'll see many purports. Prabhupada says that Prakriti is inert by nature. There is no Kartrutva present in the Prakriti. Actually, of course, Prakriti is just like you can't expect the milk coming from the nipples of a goat. Similarly, Prakriti is inert by nature because Prakriti is acting under the control of the Lord. Therefore, we see the Kartrutva in Prakriti. Fire, the iron, when it is energized by the fire, the iron acts like a fire. Iron acts like a fire because it is in coming in contact with the fire. So Nayayikas and Vaisheshikas accept the agency in the Atma. Sankhya and Yoga schools claim that the agency is in Prakriti. Advaitavada avows that the Atma has agency only because of the external imposition of the upadhis in the conditioned state. But agency, Kartrutva, is not the inherent quality of the Atma, according to the Advaita Vedanta. This is a brief summary of these different schools. So now the next point is, now he specifically talking about the Advaita Vedanta. So Advaita Vedanta is the main obstacle to the path of bhakti. Because bhakti is not possible on the basis of the absolute identity between Jivatma and the Brahman. So till that, are there any questions about the summary? Any doubts?
Prabhuji, so what is the basis of understanding of all these different philosophies? They all take from Vedanta only?
No. What is the basis? Basically based on the writings. So if you see, they have quoted based on the outlines of Indian philosophy, history of Indian philosophy, He has quoted the references. So at least it is important to know some basic points of different philosophies in when we are dealing with the subject matter. There is one book
No,
written
Prabhuji,
by
no, just wanted to know.
uh,
Sorry, Prabhuji, I just wanted to know where do these different philosophy manifest from? So, what is the source of their thoughts? So, is it all
uh,
derived from Vedanta,
uh,
or
some of them by certain interpretation of the Vedas, some of them
okay,
by the certain wrong interpretation of the Upanishads, and some people
okay,
only based on logic. Say all these, say
okay,
Nyaya school, Vaisheshika school, they accept the Vedas, but although they accept the Vedas, uh, they don't consider Vedas as the main pramana. So they mainly through logic or anumanas, they establish certain understandings of the Atma. So according to the Vedas, they accept the Vedas,
okay,
but according to the Vedas, Atma is atomic in size, Anu Parimana. But Nyaya and Vaisheshika, they say Atma is actually Vibhu Parimana. Uh,
mm,
So that means although they accept the Vedas, but they give more importance to Anumana Pramana or logic. By that they are trying to prove that Atma is Vibhu Parimana. Charvak Buddhism, they don't accept even the Vedas only, purely from their mind.
mm,
Uh,
okay. So,
hmm.
like, on what basis are they recognized, Prabhuji? Like, see, it is like when we say they partly accept Vedas and partly their own logic. So, like, everybody could come up with, certain conclusions like that, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, anybody having a little knowledge of Vedas, or even, just by hearing these different philosophy, could, make a conclusion on their own, on their own conclusion they could come to. So what is that thing? I mean, this one that makes the six schools of philosophy. So even though they differ, but why is that? There is no addition in the sense later there is no addition to number of that schools. This one and these are considered to be the basic, the six schools of philosophy. Like, I mean, who gives them that? It is like the authentication. It's that it is one of the schools of philosophy. Correct? On what basis they got that authority?
On what basis they got the authority?
Ah.
No, it's a different. They have, when we talk about Nyaya school, Vaisheshika school, or even Sankhya school or yoga, initially these schools were started as a different branches of the Vedic study. But in due course, they little went beyond the role. They started playing the role of a Darshan Shastra. So initially, they were supposed to act as a good assistants in the study of Vedanta. But some of the scholars in the school, they came up with they started coming up they started making these schools as a Darshan Shastra. Darshan Shastra means when those shastras play the role of what is the ultimate goal and what is the means to attain the goal. When they start playing that role, that is the role of Darshan Shastra. Uh, then they make mistakes. Just like a simple example, suppose in the house, so you appoint some maid servant, you appoint some plumber for plumbing work, you appoint some electrician for electrical work. So different people are playing these roles. They are all meant to, say, suppose, maintain the house. But then after some time, suppose in due course, if the maid servant starts saying that, okay, for the next 15 days, next 10 days, I am going to decide what you are going to cook for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I will make the menu. Suppose the maid servant starts playing that role. Or if the plumber says that, I will actually design the interior of your bedroom, of your, say, drawing room, something like that, if he starts playing that role. So that role we will not accept. Initially, they were appointed to play a particular role. But in due course of time, they went beyond the role. And when they start saying that, oh, I am going to make the menu card of the kitchen, or I'm going to design your interior, the inner part of the house room, in that role, we will not accept. But as long as they are playing the role which they are originally meant for, that we are all right with. So similarly, so these schools, say Buddhism and Charvak, that is out of question. They are actually, they don't accept the Vedas. But especially regarding Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya school, Mimamsa school, and Yoga. So these are all different branches of the Vedic study. They have a particular valid role. But in due course of time, they went beyond the role and they started playing the role of a Darshan Shastra. That means like a maid servant playing the role of a kitchen menu maker. So then when they start playing the role of a Darshan Shastra, then they came up with a wrong conclusion. So this point is there if you see in the Bhagavatam, I'll show you the personified Vedas, prayers. Hmm. See, of the six orthodox philosophies of Vedic tradition, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, and Vedanta, only the Vedanta of Badarayana Vyasa is free of error. And even that only as properly explained by the bona fide Vaishnava Acharyas. But each of the six schools nonetheless makes some practical contribution to the Vedic education. Atheistic Sankhya explains the evolution of natural elements from subtle to gross. Patanjali's Yoga Sutra describes the eightfold method of meditation. Nyaya sets forth the techniques of logic. Vaisheshika considers the basic metaphysical categories of reality. Mimamsa establishes the standard tools of scriptural interpretation. So they play some practical contribution in the field of Vedic education. It's like a plumber is making some practical contribution in plumbing work. But when he goes beyond that role, and that we have objection actually. So Darshan Shastra is that role. The Darshan Shastra means they are state plan, they start playing the role of what is the goal, what is the sadhana for it. In that role, we don't accept. But when the Nyaya Shastra is playing the role of a Pramana Shastra or Padartha Shastra, then it is a useful tool. The Nyaya Shastra is playing the role of a Darshan Shastra, then it will come up with many wrong conclusions different from the Vedanta of Badarayana Vyasa. So apart from these six, there are also the more deviant philosophies of the Buddhists, Jains and Charvaks, whose theories of voidism and materialism deny the spiritual identity of the eternal soul. So Buddhism, Jainism and Charvak school, they don't accept the Vedas only as a pramana. Okay. So I'll go ahead.
Thank you, Guruji.
So Advaita Vedanta is the main obstacle to the path of bhakti, because bhakti is not possible on the basis of the absolute identity between Jiva and Brahman. So when you think that, okay, Jiva is absolutely identical with Brahman, the concept of eternal servitude, eternally performing bhakti cannot arise. You may perform bhakti, but with the idea, oh, till I become one with the Brahman, till that time I will perform bhakti. But the concept of eternal servitude to Bhagavan, eternally performing bhakti, that cannot arise. So it is therefore important to understand the position of Advaita Vedanta, which Jiva Goswami will attempt to refute. So Jiva Goswami will attempt to refute the Advaita Vedanta, that is the main obstacle to the bhakti. So now he is going to explain a brief summary of the Advaita Vedanta. So Advaita Vedanta accepts 6 elements as beginningless. So Jiva, Ishvara, Parabrahman, Maya or Avidya, the relation of Avidya to Jiva and the relation of Ishvara to Avidya. So Maya and Avidya, they both mean same. Jiva, Ishvara, Parabrahma, what they refer to the formless Brahman. Jiva, Ishvara, Parabrahma, Maya, and the relation of Avidya to the Jiva, relation of Ishvara to Avidya. These 6 are beginningless. Of these, Brahman and Avidya are the main principles. So an object that always exists in the past, present and future, such an object is called a Sat or real. That which never exists is called Asat, unreal. So Avidya, which is also called by the word Ajnana, is different from Sat and Asat. And it consists of 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Avidya has existence, but its exact nature cannot be specified. So, it's explained that in the Vedanta Sara, one of the Advaitvada Grantha, Ajnanam tu Sasadbyam Anirvachaniyam Trigunatmakam Jnana Virodi Bhavarupam Yat Kinchititi. So Anirvachaniyam, it cannot be explained. Its exact nature cannot be specified. It has 2 divisions, collective and individual. When Brahman is limited by the collective form of Avidya, it is called Ishvara. So Ishvara is nothing but Brahman with the collective form of Avidya. That is why you will see that a great emphasis was given when Vyasadeva Samadhi. Vyasadeva Samadhi, what Vyasadeva saw? Apashyat Purusham Purnam mayam chatat apashrayam. Vyasadeva saw the Purna Purusha and the Maya was standing behind the Purna Purusha, under the control of the Purna Purusha. And Samadhi. But according to Advaitavada, Ishvara is nothing but Brahman limited by avidya. So it is directly contradicting the Vyasadev's realization in the Samadhi. And when it is delimited by the individual avidya, it is called Jīva-tattva. This is also there in the Vedanta Sara or Sankshepa Sharirika. Some Advaita scholars say that Maya has two divisions. Some Advaita scholars, they say that one division is called Maya, another division is called Avidya. So Maya is predominant in pure Sattva and Avidya impure Sattva. So Brahman reflected in Maya is called Ishvara and Brahman reflected in Avidya is called Jiva. Ishvara is the supreme controller, the creator of the universe and immanent in it. And the Jiva is limited in knowledge and under the control of the Ishvara. Some Advaita scholars accept only one Jiva, while others accept a plurality. Some are Eka Jiva Vada, some accept the plurality of the Jivas. References given. Siddhanta Lesha of Apaya Dikshita. A question may be raised. If Brahman is self-luminous, conscious being, then how can it lose its luminosity? Moreover, if Brahman is untouched by anything and is indifferent, then how can the Brahman create this world? So Advaita Vedanta says that avidya has two potencies. One is the potency of covering, avaranatmika, that covers the real nature of an object. And the other is the potency of projection, vikshepa shakti. Avaranatmika shakti, vikshepatmaka shakti. That manifests various avastava or illusory forms. One is so they say avidya has two potencies. Avidya itself, they say that anirvachaniyam, it cannot be explained. But still they explain avidya has two potencies. One is the avarana shakti and another is the vikshepa shakti. These potencies of Maya have a beginningless relation with the Brahman. Consequently, the potency of concealment veils the Chit and Ananda features of Brahman. So the Avarana Shakti conceals the Chit and Ananda features of Brahman. And the Vikshepa Shakti manifests the phenomenal world appearance. The potency of concealment, Avarana Shakti, it veils only the Chit and Ananda features of Brahman and not the Sat feature, the quality of existence. So for this reason, the Sat feature pervades the objects of the universe. So we also experience the table exists, the chair exists, book exists. So we experience the Sat feature. So therefore, that Avarana Shakti, it only covers the Chit and Ananda feature. But we don't experience the pervasion of the Chit and Ananda in the objects of the material world. And one of the basic concepts used by the Advaita Vedanta to explain the variety experienced by us in the temporary world. Because according to Advaita Vedanta, Brahman is the only existence. Brahma Satyam. Everything else is a Mithya. The Jagat is a Mithya. But then how do they explain the variety in this world? So they use a theory called as Adhyaropavada principle. Adhyaropavada principle. So Adhyaropa means superimposition of the non-real on the real. So avastu on the vastu. So vastu is that which exists even when we are ignorant of it. Avastu on the other hand exists only while we are aware of it. For example, to mistake a rope for a snake is an instance of adhyaropa. So in this example, the rope is a vastu and the snake is the avastu. So the snake, a non-existent vastu, is superimposed onto the rope. So the rope exists even when we are mistaking it to be a snake. At that time also rope continues to exist. But the snake exists only as long as we superimpose the quality of snakeness upon the rope. So suppose when the mistake is corrected, that means when the proper light comes, the mistake is corrected, a person sees only the rope and not the snake. So by using this Adhyaropavada principle, superimposition of the non-real on the real, they explain the variety in this word. So just like a person mistakes a rope to be a snake in darkness, similarly, because of ignorance, we are mistaking this phenomenal world to be real. We are mistaking the phenomenal world to be real. But when a person gets knowledge, then this mistake is corrected. One understands that Brahman is the only reality. This is the Advaitavada theory. The statement, this is a rope, has two parts. This is one part and rope is another part. So when the rope is seen in semi-darkness and misperceived as a snake, the rope part of the perception is veiled by the covering potency of ajnana, avaranatmika shakti. But this part of the perception is not veiled. Meaning that there is indeed a phenomenal appearance present to the perceiving object. We know that something is existing. The Sat aspect is not covered by ignorance. But the Chit aspect is covered by the avaranatmika shakti. So when we fail to perceive that the object present perceive that the object present to awareness is in and mistake it for a snake, we still experience that this part of the perception. So in that moment, the Vikshepa Shakti produces the appearance of a snake, but this part continues to exist. Therefore, one says this is a snake. So when we fail to perceive that the object present to awareness is in fact a rope and mistake it for a snake, we still experience this part of the perception. So when you are mistaking the rope to be a snake, so this part of the perception that is still perceived. That means the Sat aspect is not covered by the avaranatmika shakti. In that moment, the Vikshepa Shakti produces the appearance of the snake. So therefore, you are thinking it to be a snake. Is this point clear?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Basically, the Advaitavada theory, what we are discussing is that how does the Advaita, according to Advaitavada, there is only one reality, Brahman. So then how do they explain the variety in this world? So they explain by using the Adhyaropa principle, Adhyaropa Vada. Because of ignorance, we are mistaking the world is real. Just like because of darkness, we are mistaking the rope to a snake. So according to Advaitavada theory, the Ajnana has two aspects, Avaranatmika Shakti and Vikshepatmika Shakti. Avaranatmika Shakti covers the Chit and Ananda aspect of the Brahman, not Brahman. And Vikshekatmaka Shakti, it projects phenomenal objects. Vikshepatmika Shakti manifests various avastava, illusory forms. Vikshepatmaka Shakti is the potency of projection. So this is analogous to Brahman and the phenomenal objects. So the potency of concealment, that is Avaranatmika Shakti, covers the Chit and Ananda aspect of Brahman, but the Sat feature continues. And then the Vikshepa Shakti projects the phenomenal objects and one experiences them as existent, devoid of Chit and Ananda. And then Advaita Vedanta also talks about three grades of existence. Satta. Satta means three grades of existence. Paramarthika Satta, Vyavaharika Satta, and Pratibhasika Satta. Paramarthika Satta, ontological reality. Vyavaharika Satta, empirical reality. Pratibhasika Satta, illusory reality. So Paramarthika Satta, it can never be lost, never be negated. Brahma Satyam. Paramarthika, it can never be lost. The Vyavaharika Satta is experienced in the empirical state of casually connected spatio-temporal existence. But it is sublated in the Paramarthika state of ultimate being. So in the empirical world, we are perceiving different things. We are perceiving different objects. We are working in a job. We are having family, children. We are enjoying different things. We are suffering different emotions. But all these things will be false in the Paramarthika state of ultimate being. So, empirical existence is visible in the pragmatic objects of our daily experience in the Jagruti state, Jagruti Avastha, waking state. Material objects, which are effects of prior causes, are subject to destruction. But their existence, which inheres in their ultimate support, so material objects which are effects of prior causes are subject to destruction, or material objects are subject to destruction. But their existence, which inheres in their ultimate support, is not sublated, badita. So bada means the destruction of an effect along with its cause. In the course of the world manifestation, material objects are destroyed. But their ultimate cause, Brahman, is not destroyed. Therefore, they are called abadya, non-sublatable. So, the material objects are subject to destruction, but their existence, which inheres in their ultimate support Brahman, that is not sublated. So, sublated means deny or negate, especially as part of a dialectical process. But the ultimate support, Brahman is not sublated. Brahman is not negated. So, Bada means destruction of an effect along with its cause. So in the course of the world manifestation, material objects are destroyed, but their ultimate cause, Brahman, is not destroyed. Therefore, they are called abadya, non-sublatable. But the pratibhasika objects are abadya only as long as they are misperceived as real. But they are negated as false or badita at other times. So when a rope was previously misperceived as a snake, is later correctly perceived as a rope, then the illusory snake, along with its cause, that is ignorance, is badita or negated. So, pratibhasika satta, vyavaharika satta, and pratibhasika satta. So, pratibhasika satta is the paramarthika satta is what we perceive in the liberated state. So, according to them, in the liberated state, we perceive only the Brahman. No other entity apart from Brahman. In the Vyavaharika Satta, we perceive all the objects of this world. Vyavaharika Satta is something what we perceive in the Jagriti Avastha. And then there is Pratibhasika Satta. Pratibhasika Satta is something which we perceive in the Swapna Avastha. Or Pratibhasika Satta is something like we mistake a rope to be a snake because of semi-darkness. That is also like a Pratibhasika Satta. So these are, I think we'll stop here because there's a lot of philosophy. It takes time to digest. So we will continue. Mostly, we will complete this purport in the next class. We will begin the 20th anuccheda also. So today, in brief, what we discussed the what is the theory of Jīva-tattva according to the Jain school, according to the Nyaya Vaisheshika, and according to the Mimamsa school. There are two divisions within the Mimamsa school, Kumari Labhat and Prabhakara. And then what is the understanding of Jīva-tattva from Advaita Vedanta? And then we gave a summary of these schools based on the plurality, based on the count, number of the Jīva-tattva, based on the parimana of the Jīva-tattva, and based on whether the qualities of kartrutva, jnatritva, and bodhrutva. And then we discussed that how Advaitavada is the main obstacle to bhakti. And then we saw some of the summary of the Advaita Vedanta. So, some things we discussed like what is Pratibimbavada, Avachedakavada, and how do the Advaitavadis describe the variety in this world by using Adhyaropavada. And then we discussed the three grades of existence which the Advaitavadis talk about. Paramarthika Satta, Vyavaharika Satta, and Pratibhasika Satta. So we'll discuss the same Vyavaharika Satta, a little more. Some more summary points we'll discuss next class. Okay. Anybody has any questions?
So Hare Krishna Prabhuji, as you said, it's little technical and fun. So, but what I want to understand, so like the Brahman. So when it is when the ignorance is reflected on that Brahman, like so it the I mean it makes a fall down, right? That's and it is covered by ignorance, so it makes a fall down, and in that state it has only the sat potency, right? The chit and the ananda potency are there only when it is when the jiva when the jiva is is mixed with Brahman, right? Is that the right understanding, Prabhuji?
So the ignorance has two aspects according to Advaitavada. Avaranatmika Shakti and Prakshekatmika Shakti. So Avaranatmika Shakti covers the Chit and Ananda portion of the Brahman. It doesn't cover the Sat aspect. Because we perceive different objects in this world. We perceive the existence of the different objects in this world. So therefore the Sat aspect is not covered. So according to the Advaitavada, Brahman, when it is covered by the collective form of avidya, it becomes Ishvara.
Ishvara is the what they say is all the different incarnations, right, Prabhuji? The
Yes,
God.
different incarnations.
So that also they say it's Brahman. Okay.
Brahman covered by
So that's a collective
ignorance.
yes, some sort of ignorance. Okay. Okay.
So Brahman covered by the Maya, Sattva Guna portion of Maya is a different incarnation. Brahman covered by the Rajoguna portion of Maya, that is Jīva-tattva. Brahman covered by Tamoguna portion of Maya, that is Prakriti.
Okay.
So that is what they say.
Okay.
It's like the same. Ultimately, there is only one Brahman. Ultimately, there is only one Akasha. But when the Akasha is delimited by, say, suppose a pot with a particular size, 100-liter pot, you get a particular this one. 50-liter pot, another 10-liter pot. But when all the parts are broken, the Akasha inside and Akasha outside becomes one. So they say that so when the Brahman is covered by the ignorance, and the ignorance has three aspects: Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna. Sattva-guna aspect of ignorance, when Brahman is covered with Sattva-guna aspects of Brahman, then we get different incarnations. Krishna, Ram, Varaha, etc. Rajoguna portion of ignorance, when it covers the Brahman, then Jīva-tattva. So like that, these are the Tamoguna portion, the Prakriti. This is the Advaitavada theory.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So after having understood these are all the Purva Paksha, then when we see what is the right understanding of the Jīva-tattva with the Pramana, then all these you will see that where they go wrong, what is the right understanding, we'll see that. Okay.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Dandavat Pranam.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
We'll end here. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.